to catch. Good afternoon and welcome to day 8, am I right, of History and Systems of Psychology. I'm excited to be here with you today. Hope everyone is having a good afternoon. Want to start with a little inspiration from our good friend Aristotle. We have some inspirational words. You will never do anything in this world without courage. It is the greatest quality of the mind next to honor. Does that sound like Aristotle? Yeah. So something to keep in mind perhaps as you go throughout the day and you approach your exam with courage and preparedness. Speaking of the exam, it opens online Monday, which I believe is the 10th, and closes Sunday on the 16th. It will be composed of multiple choice, short answer, fill in the blank, and an essay question. Not super long, which can be a good thing, right? Timed at 1 hour. I would allow yourself at least 10 minutes for the essay question. So what I'm thinking when I make it, it's in a state of being made at this point. I'm going to have a section that's going to be multiple choice, a short answer section, and then the essay section. It's up to you to pace yourself on that. Any questions? Okay. Our to-do list for the day. Finish watching the video and discuss. Next, we will review new information about John Locke. I think we'll need to review the small amount that you watched in a previous video, and then we will begin our review for the exam, and we have an activity to go with that. If time allows, I will show you a short video on, it's not on ablation, but it's on something very interesting to do with cutting open people. All right. That sounded terrible. All right. Oops. Coming attractions, there you have John Locke. Okay. We're getting ready to finish watching this short movie, A Portrait of Wilder Penfield. Before we start it, however, I'd like to hear from you. What do you remember about Penfield?
Somebody called him the greatest Canadian, the greatest living Canadian.
Mm-hmm. He's no longer living, but yes, What?
They said he grew up somewhere in the States.
Yes, he grew up in the U.S., but then lived his professional life in Canada, and very renowned, not just within Canada, but the world for his contributions. Others, we're off to a good start.
Yeah, I know it's not really relevant to like his medical stuff, but I remember seeing he was a football player.
He was, and it didn't come easily. It sounded like he had to work really hard. And it's interesting, we might not expect someone who's so instrumental in starting the field that he did to also have had that side to him.
Yeah.
So people are multifaceted, and yeah, I also found that very interesting. Other items.
I mean, one of his. You can go.
I remember it talked about how his teachers had a really big impact on what career he wanted to go into.
Yes.
With his bio teacher being Edward Conklin, and then his teacher at Oxford being Sir William Osler, who really directed him towards.
Wonderful notes. A lot of detail. Good, good. So again, the power of influential people to shape a field of study, a field of profession. Did you have something you'd like to add to that?
I mean, yeah, I was just gonna say, like, a lot of what the video was covering was about his, like, how he did, like, electric currents to the brain to figure out what was wrong with Brenda Miller, right?
Okay.
Yeah, when she had seizures and trying to figure out, like, what part of the brain was causing that. So we did like a lot of experimentation on that.
Right, and under local, not general anesthesia. And why was it important to do local?
So that you can see like the cognitive reaction. Like I remember in the video they asked us like say the days of the week starting from Wednesday going backwards. So it's like so that you could hear it and see when it starts to like mess up.
Yes, I'm afraid if that was what we were going off of, mine would mess up
Yeah.
pretty
Couldn't do
quickly.
it.
It's like doing the alphabet in reverse. It's excellent. Anything else? Pioneer in the field of epilepsy research and in the treatment of epilepsy. Also, I believe we watched this part in class. He talks about the fact that he thinks being a surgeon, a neurosurgeon, is one of the worst careers in the world, but it's necessary, right? So this idea that we don't want anything bad, that you have to have surgery, but that it is a necessary practice. Does he have bulging eyes? What would we say? That was a joke. That was a phrenology joke. I can't really tell with the glasses. They're not jutting out with his face, so maybe. Don't know what Gall would have to say about that, but he has something to say about it.
It was the great unexplored field, the undiscovered country in which
Is that
the
loud
mystery of the
enough?
mind might someday be explained.
It seemed there was only one place for him: brain surgery. He went to Boston to work with Harvey Cushing. Cushing was the most successful neurosurgeon in the world, but even he lost more patients than he saved. The workings of the brain were still a great puzzle, and the surgeon's work was mostly trial and error. As he watched Cushing, Penfield began to feel that if he had a mission in life, as he so firmly believed, perhaps it was to be the one to unlock the brain's secrets. If they could understand it, they could mend it. Penfield set out to find a way to combine surgery with scientific investigation.
Sounds foreboding, doesn't
In
it?
Germany, a brain surgeon named Ottfried Förster was operating on once hopeless epilepsy cases with encouraging results. Thousands of men had returned from World War I with head injuries. A large proportion were developing epilepsy. Little was known about this ancient disease, and it seemed to Penfield a fruitful area for studying the brain. He went to Germany, and from Förster learned what he needed to specialize in epilepsy surgery. In the hospital in New York where he practiced, Penfield found the first convert to his radical ideas. Bill Cohn, a bright young pathologist who wanted to learn neurosurgery. Together, they set out to bring science into the operating room. But in the New York medical world, they were junior surgeons. They got the charity cases. The senior surgeons got the rich patients, the ones whose gratitude often meant generous donations for research. Penfield and Cohn plugged on, but it became clearer and clearer that New York was not the place for their ambitious plans. Far to the north was Montreal, a city with an internationally famous medical community, but no full-time brain surgeon. The only one in Canada had set up in Toronto. Montreal's pride could not accept that. The Royal Victoria Hospital went shopping in New York and found Wilder Penfield. They liked his ambitious ideas. He liked the opportunity they offered. The deal was struck. In 1928, with his assistant Bill Cohn, he left for Montreal with high hopes. They had hardly settled in the Royal Victoria when Wilder had to face a terrible decision. His sister Ruth was dying, and she had come to him. Since childhood, she'd had headaches and convulsions. Now X-rays showed a massive tumor. Only radical surgery could save her. There was no time to lose, but she was his own sister.
We could probably have taken her to Cushing or to someone else and got her there before she went blind. But I decided to undertake the operation myself because I was afraid another surgeon might turn back too soon, not knowing how much she had to live for.
One of the nurses was Kathleen Greer.
The patient was wheeled in, and we put the sterile sheets on, and she asked if she could talk to Dr. Penfield, and he said, "You can for a little while, but I'll tell you when you're to finish." It was a very trying day because we knew it was his sister he was operating on. There was a lot of tension, as there would be. All day there seemed to be tension, especially when he got down to the tumor and didn't know exactly whether to take it all out or not.
It extended underneath, gray, firm, malignant-looking tissue on the floor of the skull, with enormous veins coming up through it. This was already the largest brain removal I had ever made, but to my dismay, the growth was not all out, and the discovery filled me with a sort of frenzy, and I fear I was rather reckless. For about 15 minutes, I couldn't carry on, and my assistant, Dr. Cohn, had to take over.
When he had done all he could, he stopped and they closed her up. But he had done what no one else would have dared and cut away most of her frontal lobe. How much would she be changed?
Up until that time, the frontal lobe had a rather vague identification in terms of its function. What does the frontal lobe do? Here's this large part of the brain. You can take it out, and which he did in his sister, and really she was remarkably normal, except that when he went to visit her later on, he was staying for dinner, and he realized that she wasn't planning the dinner. There were pots and pans and things under the stove, and the dessert was not ready, and she didn't have the sequence which any good housewife would have developed. And it was a rather practical example, which he immediately perceived as what we know now is related to frontal lobe function. That is a sort of planned initiative, that is organizing something ahead of time so that it comes together. And she lacked this because of the lack of the frontal lobe function.
And the tumor was growing back. 2 years later, it killed her, as her brother stood by, helpless.
But he still had the wit and the scientific interest to make an important observation, which has come down to us and given us another glimpse of this remarkably complex thing we carry around inside our skulls.
In the first years in Montreal, they were just a small group, too small for Wilder Penfield and his plan. In his desk drawer was a sketch for a whole institute where surgeons and scientists, French and English, could work side by side in the search for cures for diseases like the one that had killed his sister. But the plan would cost millions, and this was the Depression. After Paris, Montreal was the second largest French city in the world. But Montreal was controlled by a tight clan of rich and powerful men, the Scottish merchant princes. From their office fortresses, they ran their empires. The railroads, the banks, the mines, the newspapers. They had built the Royal Victoria Hospital in the image of a Highland castle. Now they could help build his institute. He painted them a picture of a hospital that would make their city a world center for brain research and be a lasting monument to their power and wealth. With a grant from the Rockefeller Foundation and support from the city and provincial governments, it was a vision the citizens of Montreal could not refuse. From roof peak to foundation stone, he fought over every detail. The mark of Wilder Penfield was everywhere. Carved into the walls, his fascination with history, the primitive instruments of early neurosurgeons, and the homilies by which he guided his life. He made it a temple to science and the brain. The foyer was the centerpiece. Lamps, floor tiles, tables, even the radiator grills were patterned on the complex structures of the brain and the nervous system. On the ceiling, Ares the ram, ringed by a quote from the 2nd century physician Galen, "But I have seen a wounded brain heal." And around this, a pattern of brain cells. His heroes, the great medical and scientific pioneers. Most important of all, a copy he had commissioned of a statue in Paris, Nature Unveiling Before Science. It was a promise he intended to keep. In 1934, the Montreal Neurological Institute opened, and Wilder Penfield, now 43 years old, became a Canadian citizen. From the French and English medical communities, he began to gather his team. Among the early arrivals was an American, Herbert Jasper.
To find a clinical man, a neurosurgeon, interested in pure science was a little bit unusual. Most clinicians were interested in scientific questions if they'll help them with their neurosurgery. You know, if they'll help them treat patients, it's okay to be scientific, but science just for itself, you know, it's a waste of time. Many clinicians would feel that way. So to get in an environment where the clinicians here were also interested in pure science, whether or not it helped them at that moment to treat patients, that was an exciting experience. And of course, it was his personality and his character, and he was a lovable fellow, you know.
All roads at the Institute led to his operating room and the epilepsy operation that would become known around the world as the Montreal procedure.
Well, the development of the surgical operation on the brain under local anesthesia with the patient still awake and able to respond was based on the fact that it was necessary very often to map out the vital areas on the surface of the brain, such as those that control the hand or vision or particularly speech, in order to protect those areas during the surgical removal of scar tissue which was causing the patient epilepsy, or a tumor which may have been triggering off an epileptic seizure for the patient.
To map out the vital areas of the brain, the surgeon touched the surface with a gentle electric probe. By observing the patient's reaction, he could tell which part of the body was controlled by that spot on the brain. Touch there, and perhaps a hand would move. There, a leg. There, he might see stars. The probing mapped the brain, but it also helped the surgeon locate the spot where the epileptic fits began.
If a patient had a seizure, for example, which began with a certain sensation, let's say he felt a tingling in his ear, that started every attack, that's the aura. But if you didn't know where the ear was represented in the brain, it wouldn't help you very much, because you'd have to know where that ear was represented in order to remove the focus, you see.
Now? No. And now? No. And now?
Sometimes the sensation that accompanied the fit was not so straightforward.
They were very complex things. patient would see a man coming out of the woods and grabbing her around the neck or something like that. That was always the beginning of her attack. She was frightened. Well, where is that located? You see, in the brain. So we had to study not only these simple things like sensation, but we had to find out where complex things were located, where we looked for them too.
That was 1.5 volts.
Herbert Jasper's first contribution was the electroencephalograph, an innovation that made the search a great deal more scientific. Electrodes on the brain picked up its electrical activity and read it out on a graph.
Put it up to 2 volts, please. Now.
No.
Epileptic discharge showed up on the graph as spiky waves.
I think I'm going to change the position of these 2 electrodes. I'm moving in. How's that now?
When the surgeon had tracked down the source and removed it, the epileptic fits often stopped. The patient was cured.
I hope you found that interesting. Information you don't usually find in a history and systems textbook, but that I thought was important to share with you. I'm going to number you off 1 through 3, and then we're going to talk in small groups about the video and then reconvene and talk as a whole, okay? 1, you're going to be 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We're going to have 1s over here, so you don't have to move, right here. 2s in this area, and 3s right over here. Everything is dropping. Are we good with our location? Okay, everyone, I love that you're already talking about it. I do want to give you a few parameters or direction. As you have done in the past, I want your top 5 takeaways, and I want those ordered in terms of their importance as you see that as a group, okay? So a hierarchy or a taxonomy, so to speak. And then be ready to justify that order. The second item I want you to do or want you to address has to do with the characteristics of Penfield as a man, specifically as a scientist, but also just some characteristics that he had that led him to pursue this field with such rigor and perseverance.
Important takeaways would definitely be like a whole range of reactions and how they would map it to figure all that out.
Like knowing where which area in the brain is was. You don't want to mess with the wrong one, you know, and so they start speaking French.
I think another one was his whole idea of trying to combine science with the surgery, because I think a lot of them at the time didn't really believe in that stuff, and so his idea of pushing that into the field, I think, is really huge.
I mean, there's a lot of the reasons you believe something now, so I feel like,
That's 2.
Let's see if Was it his sister or was it just other than?
I think it was his sister.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
2 years after he did the
Yeah.
initial.
I think that can also kind of, I don't know if that's necessarily as important, but I feel like that can kind of.
A lot, I think he mentioned about that, a lot of the surgeons that he brought in science, like even if
We can put that for one of his characteristics, yeah, cause I think it said that he didn't wanna let any of the other surgeons do the surgery for him, cause they might have stopped early.
Yeah, you wanna make sure it was done correctly.
Yeah.
it's the instance.
I don't know what the characteristic for that would be.
His sister's case made him more driven to like look more in
Yeah, like more
depth.
motivation, like he's very motivated.
Versus the surgeon just like, oh, we can't help, like, and
Yeah.
just stepping away. I think another thing about his life that pushed him to be more, like to do what he did is, I remember it said he had like a near-death experience, I can't remember exactly what it was. Was it drowning?
I don't remember.
I feel they talked about it, I can't remember what it was, but he almost died though, and so him surviving made him be like, oh, you know, I have a purpose and like I have to do
Oh, I
something.
remember, okay, I remember, he was on a boat, right?
I think so, I feel like it had to do with water, I can't remember exactly what it was, but
Oh, he went to, I think it was, he went to a war on a boat, and I think it
yeah,
sank.
and then it almost crashed, or it sank, and then he could have died because it like split in half, I remember. Yeah, and then he ended up being hurt, but he survived, so yeah, he was like driven to.
Yeah, there we go, yeah. So it's one of his characteristics?
Jose mentioned that he had
Experience made him feel like that was his purpose.
Didn't it say, I think I remember one of the surgeons saying that he believed in like a higher power?
he had to
Yeah, I
work,
think,
Because of
yeah, he
that?
was religious of where he grew up and stuff, and then.
so he was not very good.
Doing well over here?
Yeah.
Okay. How about our dynamic trio?
By the time he's like a senior, I guess he was like.
Would you say like his religion kind of played into his characteristics, or would you say that
Was he religious?
I'm pretty sure he was, because I remember it talking about how like he grew up really religious and like knew his Bible and like,
Yeah,
he was
so
talking about that at the beginning.
The higher power came as well.
Okay, so
I don't know how much it
Kicking
necessarily played a role in research, but I feel like during that time, it played a role in everything.
Just like him as a person, like
Yeah,
his research and that's another thing we could say.
Some of his teachers encouraged him basically to.
Just man, so we need some
We
takeaway.
could talk about
Further was that?
in Montreal, we saw it as a way in.
Yeah, and then he with the whole the Scottish Merchant Princes was able to like talk them into letting him build a.
Something that happened.
Very ambitious, basically.
He was like basically searching for and stuff, and he went into surgery and said, "This is like this is." So I think that belief in purpose is one of the good characteristics that led him to be.
That's why I don't know, but.
So he was getting.
I didn't get to the invention, one of the inventions he was.
Get enough time to spell it, but it was like the something like that. I don't know how to write. I tried to write it down and then it was gone, so I was like, okay. But yeah, the electric monitors he created to
Even the machine,
Yeah.
measure things.
that's I get to see what it comes to. Certain things, but it's also willing to operate as his sister.
Let's take 2 more minutes.
Okay, I guess for one of the other takeaways, which I think is really important, is I don't remember the exact thing, but I remember it was called the Montreal procedure.
Anesthesia.
Yeah.
The other kind.
It's one of the something that we use even today. So I think that's
Yeah, I think that is a really good takeaway.
really, really
because we
huge
do
takeaway.
still-
Yeah.
So we use electrodes to prove the brain definition.
Since you draw Montreal.
It's because they said the name so fast I couldn't even write it down. Oh, is that what it was called? Okay.
Yeah, I think encephalo.
Just EEG.
Yeah, EEG. But now you know how long it's been around. Looks a little
Here's how you
different
spell it.
today, but
You need it?
I'll just abbreviate it.
Okay.
Give it to EEG. We got 5 takeaways right there. So any more? Do we have any more?
one more
takeaways?
minute.
So right now I have religious and ambitious.
Ambitious.
Didn't understand it completely, but he understood brain well enough to know that.
He just seemed like he was like a nicer person, like in the video where he was talking to the one girl about like everything, he was just like really nice to her and like joking with her.
It seems really down to earth.
So. Excise or ablate anything.
Yeah, everyone who talked about him was like, oh yeah, he's like a great guy. He's like, everyone just seemed to really like him like, as a person, not just for the stuff he knew and all the stuff he could do.
Has everyone had time to formulate the 5 takeaways? Close to time? All right, let's go ahead and get started with group 1. What was your top takeaway?
Our top takeaway, we were talking about how with the probing with the electric for the brain to map out the brain and what areas were the cause of their epilepsy or the cause of their issues.
Okay, so probing to map out brain and determine cause or origin.
Yeah, origin of like the issue, the area.
Okay.
Focus.
Focus, I like that too. Good. Group 2.
Yeah, like one of his main takeaways was probably like the combination of surgery versus like scientific experiments. So it's like a lot of people just hypothesize a lot of things, but he wanted to test it and see what was like truly wrong with the patient versus just kind of move on.
Okay, so the idea, which is good, we have people who exclusively do research, right? But he was a proponent not only of the research, and the research then informed his practice. Is that sort of what the gist of what you're saying? Okay. Group 3.
Basically came up with the Montreal procedure.
Okay.
Literally revolutionary in the treatment of epilepsy.
Okay, and can you explain that? It doesn't have to be you, but someone from the group, a little bit more about what the Montreal procedure entailed.
It consisted basically of like open brain surgery, but the patient was like conscious. He was able to like express what he was feeling while they were like probing him there. And then eventually with like the epileptic like discharges, they were able to like figure out what part of the brain was like actually causing like these like
Right, and that was huge, groundbreaking. Excellent. All right, let's hear 2 takeaways from each of the groups. 2 more.
He said he was pretty down to earth. Everybody in the videos said kind things about him, and he seemed kind.
Is that important in his profession?
I kind of feel like if you have a doctor that isn't, that thinks they're better than you and it shows, it's kind of hard to put your trust in them and know that, oh, you're going to have me cut open on a table. I'd like you to be a little nice to me.
Okay, so brings us to bedside manner,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Do no harm, but also try not to be a jerk,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Okay, all right. So this idea of having some sort of relationship, at least knowing the patient's name, talking to them a little bit, making them feel comfortable, right? I would think that would be really important if you're having brain surgery
Yeah, of
to have someone there. But we also want the skill to be really high.
Yeah.
Courageous. So as Aristotle would tell us, he's a good example of that. One more takeaway.
Another that was a characteristic of him is like whenever he had the near-death experience with the boat and everything like
Yeah.
that, where it made him feel like he had a higher purpose to go pursue something.
Could you elaborate a bit more on that?
Like in the accident, from what I remember, he was on I can't remember where he was traveling, but he was on a boat that got sunken and like split in half, and he got injured during the accident, and like I think a lot of people died on it, but he was one of the ones that was able to make it out and was like, okay, I was saved for some reason. Like I have something, I need to go help people, I need to go pursue something and, make
Yeah.
something of myself.
And that ties into, he seemed like a religious person, so strong
Him to-
spirituality.
Yeah, just keep pushing for what he seemed was like
Yeah.
right into.
As a motivator, feeling like there's a higher calling and you're going to answer that calling. All right, good. Characteristics or others from your top 5 list?
So some characteristics, like our number one thing is that he's very passionate about his work. So I mean that kind of reflects off his religious thing. But he was he cared a lot, and I mean the case with his sister, like he
Oh,
wanted to help
goodness.
her,
Yeah, could you imagine?
I wouldn't want to operate on any of my family members. It's too stressful.
And you're a freshman, right? So that's probably not a good idea anyway. Good. Yes, very, very passionate.
And then our second one was persistence of knowledge. Like he kept wanting to find out more and really wanted to deep dive into like what all the brain can offer to other people and like how to fully analyze it.
I like that, what the brain can offer. Lifelong learner.
Yeah.
And that's a characteristic that, well, it's a laudable characteristic regardless of who you are or what your profession is. And I hope that you will stay that way as you venture past or through the hallowed halls of RSU and beyond. Okay. Group 3.
I would say he's like really driven.
Okay, so highly motivated. Tyson, would you say a little bit to the passion?
Yes.
Driven, which then we see may tie into what drives him, right? Good. What else?
It's got he obviously was a very affable person. Like anytime you're gonna separate a rich man from his money, that takes a lot of charisma to be able to do that. So not only competent, but intelligent and very charismatic.
Right. And I thought it was interesting. He was in New York practicing, right? And what was the problem there? Why did he go to Canada?
Basically, he was one of the juniors, so it wasn't conducive to his vision of it wasn't conducive to what he wanted to do. Like he wanted to make waves, and right there he just kind of got scraps.
Right, and
Didn't do the research that he wanted to do.
his vision was very large, and I'm sure that he had lots of goals on the way to doing that, but if you're in a place where you're not allowed to grow, right, pursue your passion alongside doing your job, for him, he said, nope, I would rather leave and go to Canada. And once he was there, his career was prolific, right? Yeah. How about a couple more takeaways relating to the procedure?
To his Montreal procedure.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't he like talk to them during the
He
procedure?
would, yes,
Engage them in conversation?
Engage them in conversation, Jose, and that was to determine what area was causing or areas causing the seizure. So talk to them and press on that area, and then determine from that, like I think we saw the first part of the video, counting, maybe counting backwards from 100 and seeing where that slowed down as you removed tissue from the brain. Mm-hmm. Anything else? Pretty impressive man with a long-lasting legacy. Did you know that the EEG had been around for so long? No. And then if you think just about 100 years prior to this, they were still doing lots of leaching, right? So came a long way in a short amount of time. And it's amazing what can be done now. Brain surgery. It's mind-boggling. Hippocrates would say, wow. He'd probably say something more eloquent than that, but he might say wow as well. All right, let's go ahead and you can go back to your seats. Remember which group you're in, though, because we'll be coming back to that if time allows. I'm going to erase this. Find it. I feel that we've spent a nice amount of time on GAL. Right, does everyone feel good about that and phrenology? That may be an essay question, so you might consider studying that thoughtfully. But that's just a suggestion. All right, Pierre Flourens, we're going to talk just a little bit more about him. He was instrumental, right, in discrediting phrenology. He conducted ablation on animals. And it's interesting, it's this back and forth, okay, brain function's localized, no it's not. And then someone else comes along and says, yes it is. And then others are going to come along and say some of the parts of the brain work together and some are more separated. Again, watching the through line and the back and forth of science during this time. Okay, Cuvier was called the dictator of biology, which sounds scary, but I think is supposed to be a good thing. Supported ablation studies of Flourens. And just as a reminder, Flourens would remove small parts of an animal's brain to see what changes took place, all right? And what would happen if you remove a portion from the cortex versus the cerebellum, right? And different things happen to the animals. And he would always try to go back and make the animal as intact as possible after doing these removals. Okay, Boulez, probably bludgeoned that one. A French physician who rejected a lot of phrenology, but who felt there was some truth to the notion of an area that controlled language in the frontal region of the cortex. Okay. Tell me a little bit about what you remember from Broca's and Wernicke's area. That was a short video that we watched and then we discussed a bit further.
Broca's area deals with speech and Wernicke's area deals with understanding.
Okay. Good, very good start to that. All right, Broca's area, of course, is named after Broca. If you find a new area of the brain, I would, for sure give them your last name, right? So Broca's area was the area of the frontal lobe where ablation causes impairments in expressive speech, a condition known as Broca's aphasia or motor aphasia. Aphasia, more broadly, everyone, is referring to a group of speech disorders that are the resultant of damage to specific areas of your brain. So aphasia is large, and then whether it's Broca's or Wernicke's means something very different in terms of how a patient would present.
Just a real quick aside, aphasia with an S.
Aphasia with an S?
We also have aphasia with a G, which is swallowing.
Oh, okay.
Exactly the same.
Okay, all right. So don't get those two things confused. Okay. All right, around this time, the motor strip was discovered. So that's a distinct area of the cortex. You stimulate this area on one side and it produces specific movements on the opposite side of the body. All right, a couple more areas I want to talk about briefly. The visual area is located in the brain's occipital cortex, and that's responsible for processing visuali. I think I just combined visual and stimuli. New word, visuali. So visual stimuli that come through. Auditory area is a distinct area of the temporal lobe. When you think of a way to remember temporal lobe and hearing is like a timpani drum, and the tympanic membrane is in the temporal lobe. That's how I've always remembered it. It's sort of a long way to remember it. There might be a shorter one, but I've always used that. And then we have the sensory strip, which is a distinct area of the brain around the motor strip, and that takes in sensory functions that come from various parts of the body. And here we have an example of where those items are located within our brain. Okay. Again, just as a review, Wernicke had a localization theory. In terms of sensory aphasia, these are where people can speak perfectly fluently, but the understanding of spoken language is severely impaired, and speech is marked by a number of peculiar words. All right, I think that we will stop there in terms of chapter 3. You'll need to know everything up to that point, and then you'll need to know information about Penfield, okay? There's so much in this book, and at some point I have to condense a bit of it. So any questions on what we covered? Feel pretty good? Okay. 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 Go ahead and get back into your groups, and we're going to do this for just about 5 minutes or so. Every group's going to get a couple of pieces of paper with someone's name on it. Okay, so you'll get a group. You can be the sun, the moon, or the stars group, just a shout out to cosmology, right? So group 1, you want to be the sun, the moon, or the stars? The sun, you guess, okay. With enthusiasm, all right. I want to be the sun. Here you go. All right, group 2, you want to be the moon or the stars? You'll be making the decision also for group 3 by deciding. Stars. You want to be the stars, okay. And my moon people, you're over here. Okay. Close your book, close your notes, close your laptop. And I want you to write down what you remember about the people on this paper.
Just write it on the paper?
Yeah, on the back is fine. We're going to be 4 groups, but things change, so some of you also have a heart. Gonna time you, let's take 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want jottings. Jotting downs, is that official?
Yeah, so multiple religions.
Bullet points, I guess, I'll say that.
Translate works of famous philosophers from other areas. Sorry. So work of other philosophers from other like regions. And they're compiled into their languages. Teachings. And then from the house of wisdom came the house of knowledge and the house of science.
It was yellow bile, black bile, phlegm.
Phlegm and blood.
There were other houses that became like the house of science and the house of knowledge. It never really changed, but like other people have it. Didn't he have the souls? That is. Yeah, sounds like there's some father-son relationship. The plants.
Yeah, okay.
He's the relation dude, right? That was the sensitive.
Let's take 3 more minutes. I just gave you a generous 2 minutes.
Yes, you oppose the increase of global globalization. I think that's like it's.
Yes.
Your handwriting is a lot prettier than what's confused over it, huh?
No way. It's really bad.
I'm trying to remember the order that they came. Is it Aristotle first? Person that wants to be a provider.
And before that, it was
First. If you don't have one. Doesn't matter how smart it is.
Socrates?
That's more.
Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. And before Socrates, pre-Socratics. Go figure.
I can't remember, but what did Willis do? He was the one right before Gall, like, inspired him. Willis. Yeah, I can't remember what he did. I remember he inspired Gall to, like, pursue, but I can't remember what he did.
The academy person, he's the one, yeah.
Didn't he
No, it's Lyceum. The
kind of
academy is
build
just
off
where
of
they
Gall's
taught
idea
their-
up, or did they
they
do
taught
it together? I can't remember.
mathematics
It's the guy that,
The one that he did it with, I think, was,
It wasn't astrology, was
I
it?
can't remember.
I just want to put my notebook.
I'm like, I know I have it in there, I just can't remember in a second.
I kind of want to say that the guy that he did it with, his name started with a C, and Willis was the one that.
I think Willis was the one right before, and then Gold was inspired by him, and then it was, I can't remember what the guy's name, but the one after him, scientific about it,
Blakemore.
measure, and, but that's a different guy. So I can't remember who it was.
I know he was British. He's the one who literally just writing down notes about Willis and Robert this morning. That's the only reason I know he's British. That was the first thing I wrote down. It's knowledge.
Yeah, the psyche. Is he the psyche too?
We can do
You gotta remember that.
He tutored Alexander Gravesend.
Yeah.
See, I remember all the things that really don't matter, that are,
Yeah,
that
just
are
like-
not, that are not gonna be on the exam.
Yeah, like I'm talking about like, oh yeah, you know, the sister and stuff.
Yeah,
It's like, okay, what else
and
do you
like
do? It's
Socrates. Just random things that I know. Yeah. Oh, he started.
I don't know how I remember that, but nothing else.
Lyceum? That was a
Because
school.
Plato did, yeah, Plato did, whatever the other school was.
Was
I don't remember the name of it right now.
The academy.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
academy. And then Aristotle went to the academy. He was a student at the academy and started the Lyceum. I'm not familiar. We got a lot.
Yeah.
Socrates was the school of ancient Philosophy.
Yeah, I think he, I just, I
Yeah, I
think,
went like Socrates.
yeah, because Plato wrote all of Socrates' ideas there.
Yeah, they just kind of like followed.
Yeah.
along. Yeah, he was a student.
All right, and stop. All right. How did you do?
I just wanted to open my notebook.
You just wanted to open your notebook. All right, so. This is a way you might study and prepare for the exam. I know it's humbling and sometimes frustrating to do this, but your brain is going to be working hard. It's going to be making connections. And if you don't do this anymore on your own, it's fine, but at least you've done it a little bit. A really good study strategy, I think. And then also having the ability to talk with others if you're really having confusion. I believe that if I'd ask you to write this down on your own, you would maybe not have come up with as much as you did as a group. That's also helpful. All right, let's hear real quickly a little bit about Socrates. Who had Socrates? And you're going to function as our reviewers, so here we go. Our faith is in you.
He was a philosopher, he was before Aristotle and Plato. He had the academy where they taught math and he guessed philosophy. He wrote nothing down. He believed that it weakened your memory. He was the innate knowledge person. Then he was put on trial and killed. He was very
Okay, he was the innate knowledge person. Can someone expand on that? It's okay. What does that mean? Everyone with me?
He believed that we were born with our knowledge already and that we just had to build upon it and like go through experiences to like
Bring it out.
Yes, and so nativism, emphasizing inborn qualities. That was excellent, actually, that description. Thank you. Very good. Let's see. Viewed as a controversial figure, right? Stirred people up. All of a sudden, you have these young people thinking for themselves, not just parroting knowledge that they learned from someone else. He was a sophist, and a sophist is what?
People who are generally paid to like give out knowledge, right?
A teacher, right? Yeah. He wanted students to realize what was true and permanent as to that which is fleeting and perhaps popular. The Socratic method is really important to this. So the idea of, again, you talk about innate ideas or the concept of nativism, finding out what's right based on what is not right and doing that back and forth. All right. Good job, Socrates group. Next up we have, wait for it, who do you think would be next?
Plato. Who is Plato?
We couldn't remember, we had the different, I guess the different levels of, the different souls for different
Okay.
organisms.
Mhm.
Was also at the academy,
Mhm.
actually wrote stuff down.
He wrote stuff down. Okay.
About some stuff.
I love that. Okay, the writer and the non-writer, and he wrote stuff down about Socrates a lot, right?
The academy, he founded that, yes.
I think that was about all that we.
Okay, we need to add on to Plato. He did a little bit more than that. Everyone with me? Yeah? Tell me more. Tell us more. Or that might be Aristotle.
Oh, you know, yeah.
It's okay.
Let's try.
You're just gonna stop now. No,
Yeah.
don't stop. Don't
It's
stop. Push on.
You're not gonna forget that now,
No, I won't.
right? There you go. Plato.
Let's do another shot in the dark. I mean, you have the idea of the psyche on the board, so.
Yes, I do. I have some things up here. I think we need to look through them for just a moment, perhaps. Let's see. Okay, appearance is the Greek word for phenomenon, your actual conscious experience of something.
All right, going back to this idea, we see a particular, I love to buy purses or to receive purses as gifts. So I have in my mind what a purse is, right? But I also then have specific knowledge of different purses that are in my closet or that I might like, right? So the general idea and then the more specific based on this particular purse, which today has zebras all over it. Zebras. All right. When I was growing up, I asked for a zebra for Christmas for like several years in a row, and it took a while until I found out that was not going to happen. You know, and nor was a pony going to happen. So okay, remember those three basic components that govern individuals: need for physical gratification, courage, and reason. Hoi polloi are going to fall at the bottom of this, right? So they're driven by their base needs. People who exhibit courage are what part of the population? They would be the
Soldiers.
yeah, they might go into that line of work. And then the elite few, which had reason, were people who would be in charge of governments. He saw these functions as relatively fixed, so if you were hoi polloi, I'm sorry, you're just going to be driven by your base needs. That's it. Etc. Okay, allegory of the cave is really, really important. Someone tell me about that.
It was like the prisoners where they can only see the shadows of, you know, what they thought was real. So it was just like, that's what they thought was real. And then one prisoner was able to like escape or was left free, and then he saw the outside world, and it was really hard for him to adjust to it, to, like the true actual nature of the object. And then he came back and tried telling everybody, and they like didn't believe him, and it took a lot of like adjusting for everybody to see what he had seen.
Very good synopsis of that. You're in a cave, you have a reality, what you see, right? And that's all you know. And then going outside and seeing these other things, and maybe you thought reality was some way, and you get out and it's not. And you get out and you discover this, then you go back to tell others, and they think that you're what?
Crazy.
Yeah, unhinged to say the least. All right, so review allegory of the cave. All right, we're on to Aristotle.
So he was a Greek philosopher.
Good start.
He started the Lyceum, was a student of Plato. He taught Alexander the Great. He believed everything had a purpose, And then I think was known for creating the scientific method.
Okay. So this idea of knowing the world through the senses, through observation, that was big. Yes, very good. Other things. That's not all, though.
Yeah.
Aristotle. Talk to me about Aristotle. He's a little important.
Can I do a shot in the dark?
You can do a shot. You can do a shot in the cave.
His empiricism, that was his big thing.
It was his big thing,
So
yes.
he wanted to experience things through the senses rather than what has been told to you through generations.
Yes.
Did he teach Alexander the Great?
Yes, so they mentioned Alexander the Great. So was predisposed to place more emphasis in Plato on systematic observation of the natural world. So I would just add the systematic to that. Why did he open up, I think it's here, why did he open up a lyceum? That sounds like you're opening up a grocery store. There's way more involved, I'm sure, when you're starting that, but.
He thought better when he was like in nature and like walking around instead of like building, like sitting down and just.
Yeah, and he didn't get offered the job he wanted, which was to helm the academy, right? So he comes up with something, peripatetic school. I may have put too many consonants in that, but I think that's right. Walking school, and that was actually in like a grove of trees. Good. Anything else you remember? Taxonomy. All right, this is important, so you may want to make a note. He likened the tissues of sense organs to the surface of a wax tablet. We receive impressions or imprints, so if I were to bring in Plato and have you take an imprint of your hand, the imprint's going to replicate your essential features. They're preserved and become a basis of memory. What I would have you do after that is ball up that Play-Doh, and then you're going to imprint something else, all right? This ties in with the notion of receptive mind and our innate ability to categorize. He thought that human beings were, we were pre-wired to categorize things. Okay. Scale of nature. Vegetative, sensitive, and rational. Vegetative is going to be the land of what? Does this visual help? Does this visual help? And there's a circle thing at the bottom. Plants. You didn't get plant from that? What were you going to say? I was going to say tree. Tree, yeah, a type of plant. Thank you. Thank you for getting that. A tree that's been through the Oklahoma weather a lot. All right, sensitive.
It's like animals.
Animals, yeah. Like Mirabelle. Yeah. Though she vegetates a lot, right? And rational. That be us, right? We are those people. Okay, good. All right, who's up next in the line? Does someone have Descartes?
Yes.
Yes, tell us about Descartes.
Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am.
I think, therefore I am. Okay, good. He's going to also doubt everything, right?
So the idea is like I don't know if I'm dreaming that I'm warming myself by a fire, or if I actually am warming myself by a fire. So I don't know what's real, what's not. The only thing that I know is my mind is thinking, therefore I have to exist. I think, therefore I am.
Yeah, good. Other things?
He thought best relaxing in bed.
Yes, yes, and we talked about that a lot, that when his other classmates were doing dishes, doing chores, he was relaxing in bed, thinking deep thoughts, right? And later he did do quite a bit from that place. Let's see. Primary qualities and secondary qualities, make a note to study that. He likened the body to a well-oiled machine, right? So this idea of mechanistic physiology.
And his ideas about how sensory stimulation came in the form of vibrations that impacted the sensory organs. He believed that could initiate tugs and pulls on the filaments inside the nerves, but he thought that these were spirits that were going through. So very early kind of dipping the toe into what we understand about nerves and neurons, it starts there. Be familiar with what he has to say with reflex and stimulus. Interactive dualism. Oh, first of all, did you have anything else on Descartes?
No.
Okay. Interactive dualism, we have the mind, we have the body, and sometimes they do what? Interact, yes. Uh-huh. Yeah, good. You may want to review the short video that we watched on the pineal gland. And that takes us to Locke. Who else did I give you to write about?
Hippocrates. Yeah, let's touch on Hippocrates. Kind of important, right?
He was the father of medicine. He created the humoral theory. When something is wrong with your body, it's usually due to an imbalance of the humors, balance or imbalance. He believed in the power of medicine. He was one of the first philosophers to do so. That's about all I got.
Okay, and how about for Al-Kindi?
He brought about the house of wisdom and in turn the house of knowledge. He was able to bring many, not just in like the city that he was in, but like from around the world to like discuss.
Good.
They were able to bring translators, scribes, and in turn they would get money for translating the book Bible Week.
And this was all in the Islamic Empire, right? We talked about Avicenna. Is that true in class? A little bit. What do you remember?
It was with an eye. He did like that little project where like it was like in a wall he cut something and then you would see how our like retina would see.
Yes, which we didn't go into great detail on, but yes, you're right. Let's look just real quickly back at chapter 1, which has, I think, fallen out of my book. That's not helpful. Let's see, maybe not. Al-Kindi, when you think about him, think about Indo-Arabic numerals. That was huge, right? Oh, it was Alhazen, right? Talking about the eye, I believe, and Avicenna in medicine. Okay. All right, yeah. Sorry about that. I'm glad that I clarified. All right. I was going to make this a game with points, but then I decided not to. So let's see. I'm going to write what do we have? We have
Moon, stars, and sun. Okay. Write these on a little piece of paper, wad them up, and I'm going to choose a group for one of many lovely prizes. Okay. Oops. Okay. Let's see. Star group. Who are my stars? Come up here and pick a prize. It's a Valentine's Day theme. Did you? I like it. I like it. Okay, you can choose one. We have very little time.
Can't go wrong.
All right. Okay. What'd you get?
Chocolate. Can't go wrong with it.
Chocolate. Oh my goodness, you guys! You don't want a felt sewing kit with a or a wood cross stitch kit with a butterfly?